You could hear the laughter across the ballroom. Sharp, expensive laughter that didn't belong to kindness. At the center of it stood a woman in a midnight blue dress, holding her champagne glass like armor. Her name was Amara Johnson, CEO of Neuralink Systems, a rising tech giant rumored to be finalizing a $30 billion AI infrastructure partnership with the Cartwright Group, one of America's oldest billionaire dynasties. Except tonight, Amara wasn't being treated like a partner. She was being treated like the punchline. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We have noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue to bring you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city and country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers and soft jazz. Waiters floated by with golden trays. In every corner, someone whispered about deals, shares, or scandals. Amara, calm and poised, stood near the dessert table, waiting for the presentation to begin. She'd been invited personally by William Cartwright III, the patriarch of the family empire, a man whose signature could add billions to her company's valuation. But she didn't expect that his son, Trent Cartwright, would make her evening unforgettable for all the wrong reasons. "Excuse me," Trent said loudly, his voice slurred slightly from too much champagne. "You're the woman my father's been talking about? The tech genius from the East Coast?" The guests around them turned curious. Amara smiled politely. "Yes, I run Neuralink Systems. We've been in discussions for..." Trent cut her off with a laugh. "Wait, you run it? You look more like someone who'd decorate the office, not run it." The people nearby chuckled uneasily. She blinked, steadying her tone. "I'm sure that's a compliment. I take my work seriously, Mr. Cartwright." "Oh, come on," Trent grinned, swirling his drink. "Don't take it personally. It's just, well, Dad usually partners with people who've, been around, not startups that sound like phone apps." A ripple of laughter spread. His fiancée, Claire, chimed in. "Trent, stop. You're embarrassing her." Then with a sweet smile toward Amara, "Don't mind him. He's just not used to people like you leading billion-dollar companies." "People like me?" Amara asked softly. Claire blinked. "Oh, outsiders. New money. Tech people." The meaning was clear, and so was the sting. Minutes later, when the Cartwright matriarch, Eleanor, approached, Amara thought the tone might change. But the older woman gave her only a frosty smile. "I hope you enjoyed our little soiree," Eleanor said. "We do love welcoming fresh faces to our circles. Though, between us, these business dinners aren't really about business, dear. They're about knowing one's place." Amara's grip on her glass tightened. "I understand perfectly," she said. "Oh, good," Eleanor continued. "Because partnerships are about fit, and, well, sometimes people simply don't fit, no matter how impressive their resumes." Then she turned away, leaving Amara standing alone under the crystal light. That night, Amara stayed until the end of the event, not because she wanted to, but because walking out would have meant they'd won. At her table sat the very documents that could finalize the biggest deal of her life, a merger that would expand her company globally. And yet, as she looked at the Cartwrights laughing across the room, she realized something chilling. They didn't see her as a partner. They saw her as a token, a useful figure to parade for optics, not a mind to respect. So she stayed silent. She smiled through it all. But deep inside, a decision was forming, quiet, sharp, and irreversible. The following Monday, the official signing was scheduled at the Cartwright headquarters in Manhattan. Amara arrived early, sleek black suit, hair pinned, briefcase in hand. The receptionist smiled nervously when she checked in. "Miss Johnson, they're still in a pre-meeting. Would you like some coffee?" "Sure," she said calmly, though she could already hear laughter coming from behind the glass wall of the boardroom. Inside, Trent was holding court again. "I'm just saying," he joked to his colleagues, "if this deal goes through, we'll have to make sure our company logo matches the rest of our brands. Can't have it looking like some street startup." The room chuckled. When the door opened and Amara stepped in, the laughter froze. William Cartwright III stood up immediately, extending his hand. "Ah, Miss Johnson, good to see you. Let's finalize this thing, shall we?" Her handshake was steady, colder than before. "Yes, let's." But before she could sit, she noticed a familiar figure in the corner. Henry Cole, an independent investor known for backing emerging industries. She frowned slightly. "I didn't know you'd be joining us, Mr. Cole." He smiled faintly. "Just observing for now. I might have some interest in how this partnership evolves." Amara's heart quickened. Henry Cole's opinion carried weight across Wall Street. The meeting began, pages of projections, balance sheets, and legal clauses. Amara spoke clearly, confidently. But each time she presented an idea, Trent interrupted. "Yeah, but that's too aggressive. Do you even have experience managing large-scale capital? Maybe just let our guys handle the technical part, sweetheart." William frowned at his son, but said nothing. Eleanor sat silently, tapping her ring against the table. By the third interruption, Amara stopped mid-sentence. Her silence filled the room like thunder. She looked directly at William. "Mr. Cartwright, are these the people I'd be collaborating with on a daily basis?" He hesitated. "Well, yes. My son will be overseeing operational integration." Amara nodded slowly, closed her folder, and said, "Then this meeting is over." The room erupted in confusion. "Excuse me?" William asked. "You invited me to build something revolutionary," she said evenly. "But what I've seen tonight is arrogance wrapped in legacy. My company doesn't need validation from people who mock what they don't understand." Eleanor gasped softly. Trent smirked. "You're really going to walk away from $30 billion? Amara turned to him. "No, I'm walking away from small-minded people." Then she turned to leave, until Henry Cole stood up. "Actually," he said, stepping forward, "Miss Johnson, could you stay a moment? I think there's something these folks need to hear." The boardroom fell silent. Henry Cole reached into his briefcase and pulled out a folder stamped Cole Capital Investments. He looked at William Cartwright. "You were aware that my firm was reviewing this deal, correct?" William frowned. "Yes, of course, Henry. You're our co-underwriter." Henry nodded. "Good. Then you'll also be aware that part of my evaluation was to determine whether Neuralink systems could sustain large-scale expansion without your oversight." Amara blinked. "Wait, without them?" Henry smiled. "Exactly. You see, after reviewing your data, I realized something. You don't need the Cartwright Group. You're already outpacing them technologically by at least 5 years. They were using this merger to buy relevance." Trent's smirk vanished. "That's ridiculous." "Is it?" Henry said. "Because as of this morning, Cole Capital is committed to funding Neuralink's Series D round in full. $30 billion. Gasps filled the room. William's face turned crimson. "Henry, you can't be serious." "Oh, I'm very serious," Henry replied. "You see, I watched your son ridicule one of the sharpest innovators in this city. That told me everything I needed to know about your leadership culture." He turned to Amara. "Miss Johnson, you've got the floor. My firm stand behind your vision." Amara exhaled slowly, eyes glistening. For the first time in weeks, she felt seen. She looked at the Cartwright family, their polished perfection cracking in disbelief. Then she said quietly, "I came here tonight ready to partner. But what you've taught me is that respect is priceless, and it can't be negotiated." She gathered her papers and stood. "Mr. Cole, thank you. We'll schedule our follow-up tomorrow. As for this meeting," she glanced at Trent, who was staring at the table now, humiliated, "consider it concluded." With that, she walked out, shoulders straight, heels echoing like thunder through the marble halls. Within 48 hours, the story leaked. Neuralink Systems rejects Cartwright merger, signs historic $30 billion solo deal. The business world erupted. Reporters camped outside the Cartwright Tower, demanding answers. Eleanor refused to speak to the press. Trent deleted his social media. William Cartwright released a brief statement. We regret that internal misunderstandings may have jeopardized an otherwise promising partnership. But everyone knew what that meant. Their stock plummeted 17% in a week. Investors fled, whispering that the old dynasty had finally been dethroned by the very outsider they mocked. 2 months later, Amara stood on stage at the Global Innovation Summit, accepting the Visionary of the Year award. She wore the same midnight blue dress she had worn to the Cartwright Gala, a quiet reminder that dignity never goes out of style. In her speech, she said, "I learned that sometimes doors close not because you're unworthy, but because you've outgrown the room." To every dreamer who's been dismissed or underestimated, don't shrink to fit in. Build your own table. The audience rose in applause. Cameras flashed. Henry Cole smiled from the front row. And somewhere, watching from a penthouse window, the Cartwrights realized something money could never buy: respect earned through character. The applause faded into a slow, echoing hum as Amara stepped off the stage. Cameras still flashed, but her mind was far away, drifting back to that night at the Cartwrights' ballroom. It was strange how clearly she remembered it. The way Trent's laugh had cut through the room, the condescending looks, the quiet humiliation. But now, standing backstage surrounded by young innovators waiting to shake her hand, that memory didn't sting anymore. It simply reminded her of how far she'd come, and how far she could go without anyone's permission. Her assistant, Tanya, rushed over, beaming. "Ma'am, you were trending before you even left the stage. Every news outlet's quoting your line. Doors close not because you're unworthy, but because you've outgrown the room." It's everywhere. Amara smiled faintly. Good. Maybe someone out there needed to hear it tonight. That night, her hotel suite overlooked the skyline, Manhattan glittering like a promise. She stood at the window, phone buzzing nonstop with congratulations. She ignored most of them, except one, a no number. "You don't know me, but I work at Cartwright Group. Thank you for what you did. Some of us needed to see that power doesn't excuse arrogance." She read it twice, then placed the phone down, feeling a quiet peace settle over her. Her company was expanding faster than anyone predicted. With Cole Capital's backing, Neuralink had opened offices in London, Singapore, and Johannesburg. Her engineers were now working on neural-integrated data systems for healthcare, something the Cartwrights had laughed off as idealistic nonsense. Idealistic nonsense was about to revolutionize medicine. Weeks later, an invitation arrived. Elegant, cream-colored stationery. Cartwright Foundation Annual Charity Gala, in support of global education. Amara almost tossed it aside until she saw the name handwritten at the bottom, "From William Cartwright." She frowned, then smiled. "Of course." Tanya noticed. "You're not thinking of going, are you?" "I'm thinking of finishing the conversation," Amara said. The night of the gala, she arrived alone, no entourage, no cameras. The ballroom looked exactly the same as before. Same chandeliers, same marble floors. But the laughter sounded different this time, forced, cautious. People whispered as she entered. There she was, the woman who turned down the Cartwrights and built an empire in months. When William spotted her, his expression shifted from surprise to something else. Respect, maybe regret. "Miss Johnson," he said, extending a hand. "I wasn't sure you'd come." She shook it firmly. "You invited me. I assumed you wanted to talk." He nodded slowly. "I did. I owe you an apology and perhaps an admission." They moved to a quieter corner of the hall. He sighed heavily. "I built my company on competition, not collaboration. I raised my son to believe money equaled worth. You showed me how wrong that was. Since that day, we've lost investors, but we've also learned humility." Amara studied him for a moment. His face looked older, the certainty gone from his eyes. "I never wanted to ruin you, Mr. Cartwright," she said quietly. "I only wanted to be treated as an equal. And now," he said with a faint smile, "you're beyond equal. You're the standard." Before she could reply, another voice broke in. "Dad, the press wants a..." Trent stopped short when he saw her. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then he exhaled. "Miss Johnson, I wanted to say, I'm sorry. I was out of line that night. Completely." She held his gaze, calm and unreadable. "You were honest about what you believed at the time. I respect honesty. I just don't let it define me." He nodded, shame flickering in his expression. "Fair enough." William cleared his throat. "Miss Johnson, the foundation is expanding scholarships this year, and I'd like to dedicate a division in partnership with Neuralink. Tech for underprivileged youth. No contracts, just good work." Amara smiled softly. "That's a partnership I can accept." They shook hands, not as rivals, but as people who'd finally learned something from the fallout. Weeks later, the new scholarship program launched. The Amara Johnson Initiative for Emerging Innovators provided funding for students across rural schools, especially those who'd never even touched a computer. During the press conference, a journalist asked her, "Ms. Johnson, how does it feel to be collaborating again with the Cartwright Foundation? After everything that happened?" She thought for a moment, then said, "Redemption isn't about erasing the past. It's about choosing what to build next." The clip went viral again, and this time, even the Cartwrights smiled when they saw it. Months later, Amara stood in her new research lab, watching a group of teenage interns code together. One of them, a shy 16-year-old girl, looked up and said, "Ma'am, I read your story. My teacher said you almost quit after that party. Is that true?" Amara smiled. "Almost. But I realized something. The people who laugh at you today will quote you tomorrow." The girl grinned wide. "I'm going to remember that." "Good," Amara said. "Now, get back to changing the world." That evening, as she packed up to leave, Tanya entered holding her tablet. "Ma'am, you might want to see this." On the screen was a live broadcast. Trent Cartwright, now launching a new social initiative, speaking humbly about accountability and leadership. He ended his speech with a line that made Amara pause. "To rebuild trust, we must first learn from those we once underestimated." Tanya smiled. "Looks like you inspired a whole rebrand." Amara chuckled softly. "Good. The world could use fewer empires and more evolution." She walked a window, city lights flickering below. The skyline had changed since her first deal, but she realized the real transformation wasn't in the world outside. It was in the people who learned, the ones who grew, and the quiet strength that came from standing tall when it mattered most. She whispered to herself, almost like a prayer, "Dignity isn't something you demand. It's something you live so boldly that the world has no choice but to acknowledge it." The night was calm. The city hummed. And for the first time in a long while, Amara felt something deeper than victory. She felt peace. It had been 6 months since that night at the Cartwrights' mansion. 6 months since Amara Osei turned humiliation into history. The viral video of her walking out in silence, then returning days later to cancel their $30 billion deal, had become more than just a trending clip. It was a statement about dignity, about class, and about what happens when the underestimated woman finally takes a microphone. Everywhere she went, people recognized her, not because she was famous, but because she'd done what most people only dream of. She stood up to the powerful and walked away stronger. "Miss Osei, may I take a photo with you?" a young intern asked outside a conference hall in Dubai. Amara smiled gently. "Of course, but promise me something. You'll never let someone make you shrink to fit their comfort." The intern nodded, eyes glistening. "That's why I'm studying engineering. Because of you." Her company, Nova Bridge Global, had exploded in growth since then. New contracts, fresh investors. But Amara wasn't chasing numbers anymore. She was building something deeper, a culture. She'd launched the Floor Initiative, a mentorship program giving young women from marginalized backgrounds a literal and figurative floor to present their ideas to investors who listen. Every quarter, she'd host a session in cities across the world, New York, Accra, Johannesburg, London, where she'd sit quietly front row as teenagers and young entrepreneurs pitched bold visions. And every time she introduced the event, she'd say, "When they ignore you, it's not because your voice is small. It's because they're afraid it will echo." Meanwhile, across the ocean, the Cartwright family was unraveling. Their PR team had spent millions trying to fix the fallout. interviews, donations, philanthropy dinners. But the public had already decided. You couldn't buy back respect once you'd laughed at someone's humanity. Trent Cartwright, the smug heir who'd once smirked through champagne as Amara spoke, had resigned from the family board. The footage of his mockery still followed him. Reporters would catch him walking into meetings, microphones flashing. Mr. Cartwright, any comment on losing the Nova Bridge deal? He'd keep his head down, no words left. Behind closed doors, his father, Harold Cartwright, was losing more than money. Their partners were distancing themselves, not for moral reasons, but because no one wanted to be the next viral cautionary tale. One afternoon, Harold sat in his penthouse office, staring at a digital news article. Amarose announces partnership with Federal Tech Council, $40 billion global energy initiative. He exhaled sharply, rubbing his temples. $40 billion, he whispered, the same deal she refused from us. His wife entered quietly, setting down a cup of tea. Maybe this is what happens when pride forgets gratitude, she said softly. For the first time, Harold didn't argue. A month later, an email reached Amara's office. It was from Trent Cartwright. Subject: request a meeting message. Ms. Osei, I don't expect forgiveness, but I do seek understanding. I've watched what you've built. I'd like to learn, not for business, but to become someone better than who I was that night. Trent C. Amara read it twice, then leaned back in her chair. Her assistant asked, "Do you want to delete it?" She thought for a moment, then shook her head. "No, schedule it." They met at a quiet coffee shop, far from headlines. Trent looked different. Suit gone, tie loosened, eyes humbled. "I didn't come here for sympathy," he said. "I came to say, I'm sorry. What we did that night, what I did, wasn't just arrogance. It was blindness." Amara listened silently, stirring her tea. "You know," she said finally, "the night you mocked me wasn't the worst part. The worst part was realizing that everyone laughed because they thought they could." He nodded slowly. "I deserve that lesson." She met his gaze, steady, unshaken. "Then make it count. Use what you've lost to lift someone else." He exhaled, nodding again. "I will." When he left, Amara looked out the window at the city skyline. She didn't feel anger. She felt closure. Because true victory wasn't revenge. It was growth that didn't need witnesses. A few weeks later, she stood before an auditorium of young entrepreneurs at Harvard's annual Innovation Summit. Her speech had become legendary, but this time she added something new. "When I walked out of that mansion, I didn't know what would happen next. But I knew one thing. I would never again beg to be heard in a room that wasn't built for me. So I built my own, and the door, it's always open. For anyone who knows what it feels like to be dismissed." The crowd rose in applause. Camera lights flashed, and as the clapping faded, Amara smiled, not at fame, but the quiet knowledge that she had turned mockery into a movement. That night back home, she sat at her desk, same lamp, same laptop, same calm focus, and drafted a new message to her team. "Next quarter, we'll host a floor initiative in Lagos. I want local girls to know they don't have to fly across the ocean to be respected." Her phone buzzed with a notification, a news alert. Cartwright Foundation announced a scholarship fund in partnership with Nova Bridge Global. She blinked, surprised. Trent had kept his word. She smiled faintly, typing one more line at the bottom of her email before sending. Sometimes change begins with apology, but it grows with action. The world doesn't change when the powerful apologize. It changes when the silent stop waiting for permission to speak and build a floor of their own.